Daniel Carter felt out of place among the well-dressed crowd at Nexus Point Space Station. His worn jacket and simple clothes marked him as different from the wealthy merchants and collectors who filled the auction hall. He shifted uncomfortably, in his seat, wondering if coming here had been a mistake. 2 months after retiring from the Marines, with a modest inheritance from his uncle, Daniel found himself drifting through space with no real purpose. The invitation to the auction had seemed like an interesting diversion, a chance to see exotic items from across the galaxy before he decided what to do with the rest of his life. "Next item," announced the auctioneer, a tall man with gray skin and 6 fingers on each hand. Genuine artifacts from the Centauri system. Daniel watched with mild interest as alien art pieces and rare minerals sold for more money than he had ever seen. The wealthy buyers around him bid casually, as if the enormous sums meant nothing. "We will now move to our special collection," the auctioneer said with a smile that made Daniel uneasy. The lights dimmed. When they brightened again, Daniel sat up straight, his stomach turning. On the stage stood a line of beings, people in restraints. Some looked almost human, others wildly different, but all wore the same blank expression of defeat. "What the hell?" Daniel whispered. He had heard rumors of slavery continuing in the outer systems, but seeing it openly displayed shocked him. He rose to leave, wanting no part in this. Then the last captive was brought forward, and Daniel froze. She stood taller than the others, her blue skin shimmering with iridescent patterns under the harsh lights. Unlike the others, her eyes burned with defiance. Her arms, muscled and scarred, strained against the energy restraints. The guards kept a nervous distance. "Our premium lot," the auctioneer announced. "A warrior princess from Viridia. One of the last of her kind after their unfortunate resistance to progress. Trained in combat from birth. A rare specimen indeed." Daniel sank back into his seat, disturbed but unable to look away. The woman's eyes scanned the crowd with hatred. Her fighting skills would make her an excellent bodyguard, though we recommend continued use of restraints. Her kind are known for their difficulty in accepting new masters. The bidding began. Daniel watched as several rough-looking men eagerly raised their bid cards. One, a large man with a cybernetic eye, leaned to his companion and said something that made them both laugh cruelly while looking at the Viridian woman. Something in Daniel snapped. Before he could think, his hand shot up. 20,000 credits. He called out, shocking himself as much as those around him. The room went quiet and erupted in whispers. The auctioneer looked surprised but pleased. 20,000 from the gentleman in Section 3. Do I hear 25? The man with the cybernetic eye glared at Daniel, then raised his card. 25. Daniel's heart raced. 20,000 credits was almost his entire inheritance. He had come to the auction to look, not to spend everything he had, and certainly not on a person. This was madness. But when he looked at the woman on stage, saw her fierce dignity despite her chains, he couldn't stop himself. 30,000. Daniel said, his voice steadier than he felt. A murmur ran through the crowd. The cybernetic-eyed man whispered with his companion, then shook his head. 30,000 going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice, The room waited, but no one challenged the bid. Sold. To the gentleman in Section 3. Daniel sat in shock as the crowd's attention moved to the next lot. What had he done? He had just spent his entire future on impulse. He glanced around and caught the cybernetic-eyed man watching him with clear anger. Daniel quickly looked away. After the auction ended, Daniel was directed to a processing room. A board clerk handed him a tablet. "Sign here to confirm transfer of ownership," the clerk said. "And here to acknowledge that you accept all risks. The Viridian female has injured 3 previous handlers." Daniel hesitated, then signed. This whole situation felt wrong. But he was committed now. Any recommendations for ... handling her? Daniel asked. The clerk looked up, seeming to really notice Daniel for the first time. You're not the usual type we get for this kind of purchase. My recommendation? Keep her restrained at all times. These Viridians, especially the warrior class, they don't break easily. Some never do. Daniel nodded, though he had no intention of following that advice. 2 guards brought the woman in, still bound by energy restraints. Up close, Daniel could see that what he had thought were decorative patterns on her skin were actually intricate. Tattoos, or perhaps natural markings. Her hair, tied back severely, was deep purple, almost black. She stood straight and proud despite her situation. This is your new master, one guard told her roughly. You will obey him or face punishment. For the first time, her eyes met Daniel's directly. In them, he saw not just hatred but a promise. She would kill him if given the chance. The restraints can be controlled with this, the other guard said, handing Daniel a small device. Keep it with you at all times. You can adjust the intensity here. Daniel took the controller, feeling sick. We're done here, the clerk said. She's your problem now. The guards shoved the woman toward Daniel and left quickly, as if glad to. Be rid of her for a long moment. They just stared at each other. Daniel had no idea what to say. Sorry seemed inadequate. Finally, he cleared his throat. My ship is docked in Bay 12. It's not far. She said nothing, her face a mask of controlled rage. They walked through the station in uncomfortable silence. Daniel noticed how other travelers moved out of their way, some watching the blue-skinned woman with fascination or fear. A few gave Daniel knowing looks that made his skin crawl. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, was small, just a personal transport vessel with basic living quarters, nothing fancy. As the door closed behind them, Daniel immediately pulled out the restraint controller. Woman tensed, her eyes narrowing as she prepared for whatever pain might come. Instead, Daniel pressed the release button. The energy restraints flickered and disappeared. Her expression changed from hatred to confusion, then back to suspicion. She rubbed her wrists where the restraints had been, never taking her eyes off him. My name is Daniel Carter, he said, and I have no intention of being anyone's master. She moved suddenly, faster than Daniel could react. In an instant, she had him pinned against the wall, her forearm pressed against his throat. And why buy me, human? She demanded, her voice low and musical, despite the threat in it. What game are you playing? Daniel didn't struggle. No game. Those men bidding against me, ... I saw how they looked at you. I just ... I couldn't let that happen. She studied his face, searching for lies. So you spent a fortune on a slave you don't want? I'm supposed to believe that? I don't expect you to believe anything yet, Daniel said carefully. But I promise you this. You're not my slave. Whatever you were before you were captured, that's what you are now. I'll take you wherever you want to go. She released him slowly, still watching him like he might attack at any moment. My name is Lyra, she said finally. And if you're lying to me, Daniel Carter, you will regret it for the short remainder of your life. Daniel rubbed his throat and nodded. That seems fair. For 3 days, Lyra barely spoke to Daniel. She stayed in the small guest cabin of the Horizon's Edge, emerging only when necessary. Daniel didn't push her. He understood trust would take time, if it came at all. On the 4th day, Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, plotting their course, when Lyra appeared in the doorway of the bridge. Where are we going? She asked. Daniel turned, surprised to hear her voice. I was hoping you would tell me. I meant what I said about taking you wherever you want to go. Lyra crossed her arms. And if I said to take me back to Viridia? Then we would go to Viridia, Daniel said simply. Viridia is gone, Lyra said, her voice flat. Destroyed by your Galactic Federation. Daniel frowned. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Humans rarely concern themselves with the worlds they ruin. She stared out the viewport at the stars. The Federation wanted our crystals. We refused to give them, so they took them anyway. Daniel said nothing. What could he say to that? I have nowhere to go, Lyra continued. The surviving Viridians were scattered across the galaxy. Some were captured, like me. Others are in hiding. Then you can stay here until you decide, Daniel offered. The ship is small, but there's enough room for both of us. Lyra studied him with those intense eyes. You truly intend to honor your word, to let me choose my own path? Yes. Why? Her question was sharp, demanding. Daniel thought for a moment. Because it's the right thing to do. Because no one should own another person. Because ... He hesitated. Because I know what it's like to have your choices taken away. Something in his tone made Lyra look at him differently. She didn't ask him to explain, and he didn't offer. I will stay for now, she decided, but I am not your servant. I will not cook your meals or clean your ship. I wouldn't expect you to, Daniel said. I've been taking care of myself for years. I don't need a servant. What do you need, Daniel Carter? Lyra asked, her head tilted slightly. The question caught him off guard. I don't know, he admitted. I've been asking myself that for months. For the first time, the ghost of a smile touched Lyra's lips. At least you are honest about your confusion. They established a routine over the next week. Daniel showed Lyra how the ship's systems worked. She learned quickly, her intelligence obvious. They took turns preparing meals from the ship's supplies. Though neither was particularly skilled at cooking, they stopped at a small trading post to refuel and restock. Daniel noticed how Lyra tensed when they walked through the crowded marketplace. Her blue skin and warrior's bearing drew stares. Just ignore them, Daniel said quietly. I always do, Lyra replied. At a food stall, Daniel was haggling over the price of fresh produce when a rough voice called out behind them. Hey, how much for the blue girl? Daniel turned to see three men watching Lyra with obvious interest. The one who had spoken took a step closer. I'll pay good money, the man continued, looking at Daniel. More than she's worth, I bet. Before Daniel could respond, Lyra stepped forward, her posture changing subtly. I am not for sale, she said, her voice deadly calm. The man laughed. Everything's for sale, sweetheart. Just depends on the price. He reached out to touch her. Armed. Daniel moved between them. The lady said she's not for sale. I suggest you move on. The man's friends stepped up beside him. We don't take suggestions from nobody, one said. Daniel sighed. He had hoped to avoid trouble, but some people only understood one language. He shifted his weight, ready for what would come next. To his surprise, Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. This is not worth the fight, Daniel, she said loudly enough for the men to hear. Then, more quietly, not for these fools. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. You're right. He turned back to the vendor, dismissing the three men completely. For a moment, it seemed the men might push the issue. Then the marketplace security drones drifted closer, their scanning lights sweeping the area. The men cursed, but walked away. You could have handled them easily, Lyra observed as they continued. Shopping. Probably, Daniel agreed. But you were right. They weren't worth it. On Viridia, I would have been expected to defend my honor against such insults. And now? Lyra considered this. Now I am learning that sometimes there is wisdom in walking away from a fight. When they returned to the ship, Daniel noticed Lyra seemed more relaxed around him. She began asking questions about Earth, about his life before. He answered honestly, telling her about his childhood in a small town, his years in the Marines, the injury that led to his early retirement. In turn, she shared small pieces of her world, the beauty of Viridia's crystal forests, the training she had received since childhood as part of the warrior caste, the day the Federation ships darkened their skies. One night, as they shared a meal in the small galley, Lyra asked the question that had clearly been on her mind. Why? Were you at that auction, Daniel? You don't seem like the others who were there. Daniel set down his fork. My uncle died and left me some money. I was drifting, trying to figure out what to do next. The auction was supposed to be just something, to see exotic goods from across the galaxy. I didn't know they would be selling people. He shook his head. When I saw you up there, saw how those men were looking at you, I just reacted. You spent your entire inheritance on impulse? Not my finest financial decision, Daniel admitted with a small smile. No, Lyra agreed. But perhaps your finest. Human one. 2 days later, Daniel woke feeling strange. His head pounded and his skin burned with fever. He tried to get up, but fell back onto his bunk, dizzy and weak. Lyra, he called, his voice barely audible. No answer came. Daniel realized this might be her chance to take the ship and escape. He couldn't blame her if she did. He had promised. Her freedom, after all. He drifted in and out of consciousness, the fever getting worse. In his lucid moments, he wondered if he had caught something at the trading post. Some alien virus his human immune system couldn't fight. Hours later, or maybe it was days, Daniel felt a cool cloth on his forehead. He opened his eyes to see Lyra bending over him. You stayed, he whispered. Yes, she said simply, pressing a cup of water to his lips. Drink this, it has medicine. What happened? Nexian fever. Common among space travelers. Dangerous for humans if untreated. She helped him sit up slightly. I went back to the trading post for medicine. Daniel drank the bitter liquid. Thank you, Lyra nodded. Rest now. As he drifted back to sleep, Daniel felt her hand briefly touch his, a gesture so gentle it seemed almost out of character for the fierce warrior. We are even now, Daniel Carter, she said softly. You gave me freedom. I give you life. Neither of us owes the other anything. But they both knew something had changed between them, something neither was ready to name. Daniel recovered from the Nexian fever within a week, thanks to Lyra's care. Their relationship had shifted, not quite friendship, but something beyond the weariness they had started with. They talked more openly now, sharing meals and stories of their different worlds. As Daniel checked the ship's navigation system one morning, an alert flashed on the screen. An unmarked vessel was following them, matching their course changes perfectly. We have company, Daniel said when Lyra entered. The bridge. She looked at the scanner and frowned. How long have they been tracking us? At least 2 hours. They're staying just far enough away to avoid direct communication range. Lyra's expression darkened. This is not good. Can we outrun them? Daniel shook his head. The horizon's edge isn't built for speed. It's just a personal transport. Then we need to find somewhere to hide, Lyra decided. Is there a planet or station nearby? Daniel checked the star charts. There's a mining outpost in the Krell system. We could reach it in 6 hours. Set course, Lyra said, then added more softly, please. Daniel nodded and changed their heading. The unmarked ship adjusted course immediately. They're definitely following us, he confirmed. Lyra paced the small bridge. I should have expected this. Expected what? Who are they? She stopped pacing and met his eyes. Most likely a bounty hunter. The auction house probably reported me stolen when they realized you had no intention of keeping me as a slave. But I paid for you, Daniel protested. I have the documentation, which only gives you the right to own me, not free me, Lyra explained. In their eyes, you've stolen valuable property from the system by offering me freedom. Daniel cursed. That's insane. That is reality, Lyra countered. I should leave at the outpost. They want me, not you. No, Daniel said firmly. We'll face this together. The mining outpost of Krell 3 appeared on their view screen hours later, a sprawling collection of habitation domes and industrial structures built into the side of a cratered moon. Daniel transmitted their landing codes and received clearance. To dock. The other ship is requesting landing permission too, he noted. We don't have much time. They docked quickly and made their way through the crowded, dusty corridors of the outpost. Miners and traders from a dozen different species pushed past them, too busy with their own concerns to pay much attention to a human and a Viridian. We need to find somewhere to hide until we can figure out who's following us, Daniel said, leading them toward the trading district. They slipped into a busy cantina filled with off-duty miners. Daniel found a table in a dark corner while Lyra watched the entrance. There, she said quietly, nodding toward the door. A tall man in a black combat suit had entered. His right eye gleamed with cybernetic enhancements, the same man who had bid against Daniel at the auction. He scanned the room slowly, methodically. That's a guild hunter, Lyra whispered. One of the best trackers in the galaxy. Daniel studied. The man, he was at the auction. He bid against me for you. Then this is personal for him. He doesn't like losing. Lyra's hand moved to her waist, where Daniel knew she now carried a small blade she had acquired at the trading post. We need to leave, Daniel said. There's a back exit. They slipped out just as the hunter looked in their direction. Moving quickly through the back alleys of the outpost, they heard heavy footsteps behind them. Stop right there, called a deep voice. I only want the Viridian. Daniel and Lyra ducked behind a cargo container. Go, Lyra urged. This is my fight, not yours. I'm not leaving you, Daniel insisted. The hunter's voice came closer. I know you're here. My name is Garrick Walsh. Perhaps you've heard of me? I specialize in retrieving valuable property. Daniel peeked around the container. Walsh stood 20 meters away, a high-powered restraint gun in his hands. The Viridian female isn't just a runaway slave, Walsh continued. She's military property, stolen from the Galactic Federation. There's a big reward for her return. Daniel looked at Lyra questioningly. He's lying, she whispered, but something in her eyes told Daniel there was more to the story. Walsh moved closer. I know the human is with you, Viridian. He doesn't understand what you are, does he? He doesn't know why you're so valuable. Daniel touched Lyra's arm. What's he talking about? Lyra's jaw tightened. Later, we need to move. They crept along the row of containers, staying low. Behind them, Walsh laughed. My cybernetic eye can track heat signatures. I can see you moving. There's nowhere to run. Suddenly, a group of miners emerged from a side passage, pushing hovercarts loaded with ore. Daniel pulled Lyra into their midst, blending with the crowd. This way, he said, guiding her toward the docking bays. They were almost there when alarms began blaring throughout the outpost. Walsh's voice came over the public address system. Attention all security personnel. Be on the lookout for a human, male and a Viridian female. The Viridian is wanted by the Galactic Federation for treason and theft of military secrets. Approach with extreme caution. The miners around them stopped and stared. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand and ran for the docks. Security. Guards appeared ahead, blocking their path. Daniel pulled Lyra into a maintenance shaft. The ship is just 2 levels down, he said as they climbed down the ladder. When they reached the docking bay, they found Walsh waiting beside the horizon's edge, restraint gun ready. End of the line, he said, smiling coldly. The Federation has been looking for the last Viridian commander for months. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra. Whatever you think she is, you're wrong. Walsh laughed. Am I? Did she tell you she was just some random warrior princess? She's not. She's Commander Lyra, the last military leader of Viridia, the only one who escaped with the access codes to their defense systems and weapons caches. Daniel didn't look back at Lyra, keeping his eyes on Walsh. I don't care who she was. She's free now. No one's free, friend. We all belong to someone. Walsh raised his weapon. The Federation paid good money to ensure Viridia's cooperation. When your blue friend and her kind refused to surrender their military technology, well, examples had to be made. You destroyed an entire civilization for weapons? Daniel asked, disgusted. I just collect the bounties, Walsh replied. Step aside now, and you might live through this. Instead, Daniel charged forward. Walsh fired, but Daniel dropped and rolled, crashing into the hunter's legs. The restraint beam missed, hitting a cargo container. Lyra moved with incredible speed, leaping over both men and knocking the weapon from Walsh's hand. She delivered a precise strike to his cybernetic implants that made him howl in pain. Daniel scrambled to his feet. The ship! Now! They raced up the ramp of the horizon's edge. Daniel threw himself into the pilot's seat and fired up the engines while Lyra sealed the airlock. Security override in progress, announced the ship's computer. Docking clamps engaged. They're trying to lock us down, Daniel said, fingers flying over the controls. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat. Can you bypass it? Daniel grinned. One thing about retiring from the Marines, you learn all sorts of useful override codes. He entered a series of commands, and the security alert cleared. The docking clamps released with a loud clank as they lifted off. They saw Walsh staggering to his feet on the dock, his face twisted with rage. He shouted something they couldn't hear. He'll keep coming, Lyra said as they broke orbit. Daniel, set course for deep space. Then we'll keep running. He turned to face her. But first, I think you owe me the truth. All of it, Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, I do. She looked out at the stars. It began when the Federation discovered the crystals. On Viridia could power their new weapons. The horizon's edge drifted in the shadow of an asteroid belt. Daniel had shut down all non-essential systems to avoid detection. In the dim light of the bridge, Lyra finished telling her story. The Federation wanted our crystal technology to power their new weapons, she explained. When our leaders refused, they labeled us as threats. The attack came without warning. Daniel listened quietly as Lyra described the fall of her world. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes revealed the pain beneath her words. As military, Commander, I led our final defense. We managed to evacuate some of our people before the end. I was captured trying to protect the last transport. She looked down at her hands. I carried data that could expose Federation war crimes. That is why Walsh wants me so badly. Do you still have this data? Daniel asked. Lyra touched a spot behind her ear. Here, encoded in a subliminal chip. It contains records of the Federation's actions, proof they attacked us first. Daniel considered this information. We need help. I can't fight the entire Federation, but I know people who might help us. Why would any human help a Viridian? Lyra asked. Not all humans support what the Federation did, Daniel explained. I served with some good people in the Marines. People who believe in justice. Lyra studied his face. You would risk your life for this? For me? For what's right, Daniel said, though they both heard the unspoken truth beneath his words. Daniel sent encrypted messages to his old contacts. 3 days later, they received a response from Catherine Mills, his former commander. She's agreed to meet us, Daniel told Lyra, on Sanctuary Station. It's neutral territory, not under Federation control. Can she be trusted? Lyra asked. Catherine has never been a fan of Federation politics. If anyone will help us, it's her. They set course for Sanctuary Station, a massive space habitat in the border region between Federation space and the independent systems. The station's reputation for neutrality made it a popular meeting place for those who preferred to avoid official attention. They docked at a quiet bay away from the main commercial areas. Daniel led Lyra through less traveled corridors to a small bar called the Neutral Ground. Catherine Mills waited at a corner table. She was older than Daniel, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Next to her sat a younger man, with dark hair and a nervous energy about him. Daniel, Catherine greeted him with a nod. It's been a while. Thanks for coming, Daniel said, taking a seat across from her. Lyra sat beside him, her posture tense and alert. This is Eric Ramirez, Catherine introduced the younger man. Best tech specialist I know. If your data is genuine, he'll confirm. Eric nodded but said nothing, his eyes fixed on Lyra with fascination. This is Lyra, Daniel said. Commander of the Viridian Defense Forces. Catherine raised an eyebrow. So it's true. The last Viridian commander. She leaned forward. Half. The galaxy thinks you're dead. The other half is looking for you. I know, Lyra said. That is why we need your help. Daniel explained their situation, while Catherine listened carefully. When he finished, she looked thoughtful. What you're suggesting is serious, she said. Exposing Federation war crimes could destabilize the entire galactic government. Or it could bring justice, Daniel countered. Catherine nodded to Eric. Let's see what the commander is carrying first. Eric produced a small device. This will read the data without removing the chip, he explained to Lyra. It won't hurt. Lyra hesitated, then turned her head to give him access to the chip behind her ear. Eric held the device against her skin for several seconds, then connected it to his portable terminal. His eyes widened as he reviewed the data. This is ... incredible. Military communications, orbital scans, everything documenting the Federation's unprovoked attack on Viridia. It's all here. Catherine examined the screen. It looks genuine, but getting this information public won't be easy. The Federation controls most communication channels. But not all of them, Eric said, excitement in his voice. I know how we could broadcast this across every system. There's a communications hub on Sanctuary Station. If I can access the main terminal there, I could override the standard protocols. The hub is heavily guarded, Catherine warned. We can handle guards, Daniel said, looking at Lyra, who nodded in agreement. They spent hours planning. Eric would need 10 minutes at the main terminal to upload and distribute the data. Daniel and Lyra would create a distraction while Catherine used her security clearance to get them access to the restricted areas. We move at station midnight, Catherine decided, when the guard rotation happens. As they left the neutral ground, Lyra pulled Daniel aside. Why is she helping us? She asked quietly. What does she gain? Daniel watched Catherine and Eric walking ahead of them. Catherine lost her son in a Federation peacekeeping mission 3 years ago. She's never believed the official story about what happened. Lyra understood then. She seeks the same justice we do. That night, they gathered near the communications hub. The corridors were nearly empty, with most of the station's inhabitants asleep or engaged in night cycle activities. Catherine approached the security checkpoint first. Her old Federation military ID still active enough to get her past the initial screening. Once inside, she disabled the alarm on a service entrance, allowing Daniel, Lyra, and Eric to slip in undetected. The main terminal is 2 levels up, Eric whispered, consulting the station schematics on his device. There will be at least 4 guards. We'll handle them, Daniel assured him. They moved silently through the maintenance corridors. When they reached the level with the main terminal, Catherine checked her watch. Guard rotation in 3 minutes. That's when we move. The plan worked perfectly at first. When the guards changed shifts, Catherine created a distraction by triggering a minor system alert in another section. Most of the security personnel rushed to investigate, leaving only 2 guards at the main terminal. Daniel and Lyra subdued them quickly and without serious injury. Eric hurried to the terminal and began uploading Lyra's data. "This will take 7 minutes," he said, fingers flying over the controls. Then another 3 to set up the broadcast. Daniel and Lyra stood watch while Catherine monitored security. Channels from a separate console. "Something's wrong," Catherine said suddenly. "The station security network just went into lockdown." That's not standard procedure for a minor alert. Before Daniel could respond, the doors to the terminal room slid open. Garrett Walsh stepped in, followed by 6 heavily armed Federation soldiers. "Commander Mills," Walsh said, his cybernetic eye glowing in the dim light. "I'm disappointed. Aiding fugitives is beneath you." Catherine stared at Walsh, then at the Federation soldiers. "You knew we were coming." "Of course she did," Lyra said quietly. She told them. Daniel looked at Catherine. In shock. "Is that true?" Catherine's expression hardened. "I'm sorry, Daniel, but the Federation promised answers about my son if I helped them find the Viridian commander." "You betrayed us," Daniel said, the words bitter in his mouth. "I betrayed nothing," Catherine replied. "I served the Federation my entire life. I'm not going to help bring it down, even for Michael's memory." Walsh stepped forward. "Enough talking. Secure the Viridian and arrest the others." Daniel moved to stand in front of Lyra. "Eric," he called without taking his eyes off Walsh. "How much longer?" 6 minutes for complete upload," Eric answered, still working furiously at the terminal. "You don't have 6 minutes," Walsh said, raising his weapon. "Step away from the alien, Carter. This doesn't have to end badly for you." Lyra placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Perhaps I should go with them," she said softly. "I don't want you to die for my cause." Daniel covered her hand with his own. "Your future is your own," he said firmly. "I won't let anyone take that from you again." As the Federation soldiers moved forward, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The lights flickered, and the main screens in the terminal room lit up with Viridian script. Eric grinned. "I didn't need 6 minutes." That was a lie. The upload is complete. The broadcast has begun. Walsh's face contorted with rage. "Stop it, now." "Too late," Eric said. "Every communication device in Federation space is receiving the data. The truth about Viridia is out." Chaos erupted in the terminal room. The Federation soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to secure their prisoners or stop the broadcast. Walsh had no such doubts. "Kill them all," he ordered, raising his weapon at Eric. Daniel tackled Walsh before he could fire. They crashed into a console, sending sparks flying. The Federation soldiers moved to intervene, but Lyra was faster. She disabled 2 of them with swift, precise strikes before they could even aim their weapons. Catherine backed away from the fighting, her face conflicted. When one of the soldiers raised his weapon toward Daniel's back, she made her choice. She drew her own sidearm and fired, hitting the soldier in the shoulder. "Get out of here," she shouted to Daniel. "I'll hold them off." Eric grabbed his equipment. "This way. There's a maintenance tunnel." Daniel scrambled to his feet as Lyra disabled another soldier. Together with Eric, they rushed toward the maintenance hatch. Catherine positioned herself between them and the remaining soldiers. "Go," she yelled. "I was wrong, Daniel. Make this right." Before Daniel could respond, Walsh recovered and fired at Catherine. She fell, clutching her side. Daniel wanted to go back for her, but Lyra pulled him toward the escape route. She chose her path, Lyra said. Honor it by surviving. They descended through the maintenance tunnel, following Eric as he navigated the maze of service corridors. Behind them, alarms continued to blare throughout the station. The whole station will be looking for us, Eric said, checking his portable device. But it doesn't matter. The data is already spreading across every system. They can't stop it now. What about Catherine? Daniel asked. Eric's expression was grim. I don't know. But she gave us a chance. We need to take it. They reached a lower level of the station where cargo ships docked. Eric led them to a small transport vessel. Can you fly this? He asked Daniel. Daniel examined the controls. It's an older model, but similar enough to mine. Yes, I can fly it. Take it, Eric said. I have contacts on the station. I can hide here until things quiet down. Come with us, Daniel offered. Eric shook his head. Someone needs to make sure the data keeps spreading. Besides, they'll be looking for 3 fugitives, not 2. Lyra clasped Eric's arm in a warrior's farewell. Thank you for your courage. Good luck, Commander, Eric replied with a small smile. Make them pay for what they did to your world. Within minutes, Daniel had the transport ship powered up. They slipped out of the station amid the confusion, setting course for the outer systems beyond Federation control. Where do we go now? Lyra asked once they were safely away. I know a place, Daniel said. A small colony on Terrace 4. It's independent, mostly refugees and people looking to start over. We can lie low there while we figure out our next move. As they traveled, they monitored the communications channels. The data from Lyra's chip had spread faster than anyone could have imagined. News reports from across the galaxy spoke of protests on Federation worlds. Some Federation officials were already resigning, trying to distance themselves from the atrocities committed on Viridia. It's working, Lyra said softly, watching a broadcast showing crowds gathering outside Federation headquarters. They can't hide the truth anymore. Daniel watched her face, seeing a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Is it what you hoped for? Justice is never what you hope for, she replied. But it is necessary. They reached Terrace 4 3 days later. The colony was a collection of simple buildings nestled in a green valley, surrounded by mountains. The colonists welcomed them without questions. Another pair seeking a fresh start was nothing unusual here. For 2 weeks, they lived quietly in a small cabin at the edge of the settlement. Each day brought news of more changes sweeping across the galaxy. The Federation Council had ordered an investigation into the Viridia incident. Several high-ranking military officials had been arrested. They're calling for a search for Viridian survivors, Daniel told Lyra one evening as they sat outside their cabin. There's talk of reparations, of helping your people rebuild. Lyra looked up at the stars. There are not enough of us left to rebuild what was, but perhaps we can create something new. A message arrived from Eric the next day. He had gone underground, but was safe. Catherine had survived her injuries and was under house arrest, awaiting a hearing. The charges against her might be reduced because she had ultimately helped them escape. The most important news, however, was about Walsh. The bounty hunter had gone rogue, furious that his prize had escaped. He had disappeared from Sanctuary Station, swearing revenge. He will come for us, Lyra said. Not a question, but a certainty. Daniel nodded. Yes, sooner or later. It was later rather than sooner. Almost a month passed in peace before their sensors detected an approaching ship. Daniel recognized the signature immediately. Walsh, he confirmed. Landing about 2 kilometers from the settlement. Lyra strapped on the blade she still carried. We should meet him away from these people. They should not suffer for our battle. Daniel agreed. They left the settlement and headed into the surrounding hills. From a high ridge, they watched Walsh's ship land in a clearing below. You don't have to do this, Daniel said. We could run again. Lyra shook her head. Running solves nothing. It is time to end this. They descended to the clearing. Walsh was waiting for them, his cybernetic eye glowing in the twilight. He looked different, thinner, more haggard, but no less dangerous. "The famous Commander Lyra," he called out. "And her human pet. You've cost me everything." "The Federation has abandoned you," Daniel said. "The bounty is gone. There's no reason to continue this hunt." Walsh laughed bitterly. "This stopped being about money the moment you humiliated me. This is personal now." He drew 2 energy blades, their edges humming with deadly power. "I'm going to finish what the Federation started with your kind," he told Lyra. Lyra stepped forward, her own blade ready. "Many have tried." Walsh attacked with surprising speed, his blades cutting through the air where Lyra had stood a moment before. She moved like water, evading each strike with seemingly effortless grace. Daniel circled around, looking for an opening to help. But this was Lyra's fight, and he understood that she needed to face this enemy herself. The duel continued for minutes. That felt like hours. Walsh was skilled and enhanced by his cybernetics, but Lyra was fighting for more than just her life. She was fighting for her people, for justice, for a future that had almost been taken from her. When the end came, it was decisive. Walsh overextended on a thrust, and Lyra slipped inside his guard. With a single motion, she disarmed him and knocked him to the ground, her blade at his throat. Walsh glared up at her, hatred in his eyes. "Finish it," he spat. "That's what your kind does, isn't it? Kill your enemies?" Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then, to both Walsh's and Daniel's surprise, she lowered her blade. "No," she said. "That is what your kind tried to make us become. I choose differently." She stepped back. "Your hunt is over, Walsh. The galaxy knows the truth now. Return to the shadows where you belong." Walsh stared at her in disbelief, then at Daniel. Without another word, he staggered to his feet and back to his ship. They watched as it lifted off and disappeared into the darkening sky. "You let him go," Daniel said as they walked back toward the settlement. "Killing him would not bring back my world," Lyra replied, "and I am tired of death." That night, as they sat beneath the unfamiliar stars of their new home, Lyra spoke of the future for the first time. "I have received messages from other Viridian survivors," she said. "They are gathering on a world beyond Federation space. They asked me to join them, to help lead our people again." Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. "You should go. They need you." Lyra turned to face him. "Yes, but I would ask something of you, Daniel Carter." "Anything," he said simply. "Come with me," she said. "Not as the human who purchased me, but as the man who showed me that freedom is more than just the absence of chains. As the man who gave me a choice when no one else would." Daniel looked at her, this warrior who had become so much more to him than he could have imagined that day at the auction. "Are you sure that's what you want?" he asked. Lyra reached out and took his hand. "I have had many things taken from me. My home, my people, my dignity. But you gave me back the most important thing, the right to choose my own path. Could I choose one with you beside me, if you are willing?" Daniel smiled and squeezed her hand. "I am." 3 days later, they left Terrace 4 in their small transport ship. As the planet fell away beneath them and the stars opened up before them, Daniel set course for their new destination. "Ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her eyes on the future that stretched out before them. "Ready."